Welcome back to One World. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Let's catch you up on the headlines. Hardline conservative cleric Ibrahim Raisi has been sworn in as the new president of Iran. He was inaugurated in Tehran today. Raisi called for the lifting of US sanctions and said he would support any diplomatic plan to make it happen. Nigerian officials have seized a record $54 million worth of pangolin parts and elephant tusks. Authorities arrested 3 people and are looking for a 4th. Nigeria is a hub for wildlife trafficking. The government is trying to combat that trade. Record-breaking heat and strong winds are fueling dozens of wildfires across Greece. Authorities ordered more evacuations on an island near Athens as crews battle the blazes, including one near ancient Olympia. But after an all-night battle, firefighters appear to have saved that site. CNN will continue to follow the developments. Well, it's been called the forgotten epidemic. Malaria, one of the oldest and deadliest diseases, and it still poses a threat to more than half of the countries around the world. Sub-Saharan Africa carries a disproportionately high share of the burden, and children under the age of 5 are the most vulnerable, accounting for most of the 400,000 malaria deaths globally each year. But now there may be a possible breakthrough in the fight against malaria. A new vaccine called R21 is showing promise in early clinical trials with a 77% efficacy rate in children. That's a significant increase from the only other available malaria vaccine that's currently being used as part of a pilot program in 3 African nations. And last month, biotech said it plans to develop its own vaccine based on the mRNA technology that's used in the COVID-19 vaccines. The announcement was welcomed by the head of the World Health Organization.
We still have a very long road to travel, but this is an ambitious and purposeful stride down that road.
We're turning to the exchange where we take a look at the progress and the challenges still ahead when it comes to fighting malaria. Dr. Andrew Hammond is a molecular biologist who is working on a study to genetically modify mosquitoes. I spoke to him earlier and began by asking what this could mean in an effort to contain one of the world's biggest childhood killers. Andrew, you co-authored a study which genetically engineered mosquitoes to essentially self-destruct, making them incapable of transmitting malaria. This certainly sounds like a potential game changer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if we could actually bring this technology to Africa, you could see a very real change in malaria transmission. And I think it could bring us towards the eradication goal that everybody's hoping for.
There's no doubt mosquitoes are responsible for spreading deadly diseases like malaria, like yellow fever, dengue fever, Zika virus, causing hundreds of thousands of deaths every single year. Why can't we just get rid of them? It's certainly a question that comes up a lot, because this isn't the first time that scientists have tried to genetically modify mosquitoes, right?
No, it's certainly not. So we have a number of challenges really in our way. Part of the problem is that we have a whole range of existing tools like bed nets and insecticides, but the problem is often getting access of those interventions to the people who need it the most. And unfortunately, that tends to be people living in the poorest rural regions of sub-Saharan Africa. So with something like a gene drive, you can actually have mosquitoes spread that intervention to the people who need it most. It's actually the mosquitoes that do the work.
And just to talk to us about this being an African-led research project and why this could be so crucial in an area like sub-Saharan Africa.
The problem of malaria is really a problem of sub-Saharan Africa, where the vast majority of deaths occur. There are around 400,000 lives claimed each year, almost all in children under the age of 5. And what we saw is that there needs to be an importance of building a technology that involves the people who are affected by it. And so I'm working as part of a research consortium called Target Malaria. There are almost 200 of us, and many of us are based actually in malaria endemic countries, including Burkina Faso, Mali, Uganda, and Ghana. And I think that this is incredibly important because these technologies need to be developed by the people who are most in need of these interventions for the people who are in need of these interventions.
Andrew, explain for us how you genetically modify a mosquito so that it can't transmit malaria.
Right. So what we do is we use a technology called CRISPR, and we engineer a mosquito gene that the female mosquitoes need to survive. But we have a special trick, which is called a gene drive. And what that trick can do is to cheat the normal rules of inheritance. So a gene drive mosquito can spread that mutation to an entire population of mosquitoes on its own, and it makes the female mosquitoes infertile. So what happens is you can crash that population and you can reduce the number of malaria mosquitoes without affecting the other 3,500 species of mosquito that do not transmit disease.
It sounds absolutely incredible. So if all goes to plan, what sort of time frame are we looking at?
So with any new technology, there needs to be very rigorous safety and efficacy testing. So we're actually looking at a phased approach to testing that would initially involve non-gene drive mosquitoes. And we've actually got past the first phase of this. We've released non-gene drive mosquitoes in Burkina Faso, and that release was incredibly successful. But in terms of getting a gene drive actually released in a field site, this is something that could take maybe 10 years. I think what's incredibly powerful is that once you release a gene drive, it's very fast acting. You could see an effect on a regional scale, perhaps even a countrywide scale, within 4 or 5 years after release.
Wow. It really is incredible. There is also obviously a lot of interest in a malaria vaccine, and there's discussion of now using similar technology, the so-called mRNA technology used in the COVID-19 vaccines by Pfizer, by Moderna, to target malaria. That must also provide some hope.
Yeah, so I think everyone who's working towards the goal of a malaria eradication, what we all want is a range of different interventions. We want to tackle this disease with everything we've got. And I think that new vaccines are going to be an incredibly important part of that. So too are going to be new insecticides and better insecticide-treated nets. And I think gene drives will also play a role in that. I think that with vaccines, one of the real problems that we've had up until now is that the malaria parasite is very fast evolving and is very good at evading the different ways our immune system has of finding it. And that's made vaccine development very challenging. I think that with new mRNA vaccines and some other technologies being developed, we have a real shot at developing effective vaccines that could work for malaria control.
And just quickly, just finally, how does your study to genetically modify mosquitoes compare to all the others that have been done in the past? Why is it different?
Sure. So that you may have heard of these genetically modified mosquitoes that have been tested in Central America and even now tests in Florida. But these genetically modified mosquitoes, they don't carry this special trick called a gene drive. And the difference is that with these more traditional genetically modified mosquito approaches, you have to release millions upon millions of these insects every week to have an effect. And that's something that's possible in regions of the Americas where you have the money and the resources to do so. But with a gene drive, you can release just a few thousand, perhaps just a couple of times. And those mosquitoes will spread that intervention on their own. So you can do a very limited release without the resources, without the infrastructure, without millions and millions of mosquitoes, and they will do the work within 4, 5, 6 years. It's really a game changer.
Incredible. We'll have to leave it there for now, but good to have you on the program, Andrew Hammond. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Lynda.